Tropical Storm Bret is moving through the islands of the Caribbean Sea. Good evening, I'm Mike Naso with the latest on Tropical Storm Bret, as well as the rest of the tropics, very active for the night of June 22nd. Here is the water vapor imagery. I have a few features I want to point out to you. First of all, this is Tropical Storm Bret, which tried to become a hurricane over the last 24 hours. It looks like the center is where I circled it, right? But the center is actually very, very near St. Lucia, moving through the areas there of the Windward Islands, which means that it is far removed from the convection and the wind shear is taking a toll on Bret. Bret will continue to move through the islands and then will die in the Caribbean Sea. However, to the east of Bret, we have a new tropical storm. This is Tropical Storm Cindy, another tropical storm in the central Atlantic for late June. Very, very rare indeed. Cindy could get rather strong as a tropical storm, but probably not a hurricane, and should continue north of the islands, probably eventually turning, but again, if you're in Bermuda and land masses west, we'll have to talk about it. Another wave behind Cindy, not looking as impressive, but again, quite an active Atlantic for late June. Here's the latest on Bret as of 11 p.m. Atlantic time. Tropical Storm Bret was at 13.3 north, 61.1 west, winds down to 60 miles per hour, had been up to 70, so it almost got to hurricane strength, but now it's weakening somewhat, moving west very quickly at 18 miles per hour, the pressure about 1,004 millibars. The tropical storm warnings are in effect for Dominica, St. Lucia, Martinique, Barbados, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines, because you guys could get into the tropical storm force winds. At St. Lucia Airport, we actually had a sustained wind of 41 miles per hour and a gust to 69 miles per hour. So we had a gust almost to hurricane force in St. Lucia. I'll show you that on the radar in a second. Here's the computer model guidance, very, very straightforward, that Bret and what becomes of Bret should move almost straight west towards Central America, but before it gets there, it will likely turn into a remnant low and not be a tropical cyclone anymore. It's just too hostile an upper-level environment for Bret to continue. Had it been August or September, we would have dealt with a strengthening hurricane roaring through the Caribbean Sea. Thankfully, it is still late June, but nevertheless, for late June, to have a system come from the eastern Atlantic off Africa, and now another one behind it, very, very rare. Here's the infrared satellite imagery of Bret. Again, you would think the center would be here near Barbados, but the center is actually moving more near St. Lucia and areas of St. Vincent down here, and that means it's far removed from the deep convection. These bands blowing up here will cause heavy rainfall once it moves through, but again, the wind shear on this map is very easy to point out, blowing right into Bret, weakening it. The winds are in this area here, anywhere in the orange. That includes those islands like Dominica, Martinique, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, the Grenadines, that are under those tropical storm warnings. But again, it looks like the strongest winds right now, very near St. Vincent, where the center is, in the area there of the Windward Islands. Here's the Barbados radar, and looks better than the Cuban radar does, but still is kind of difficult to point out. But right there is the center of Bret and the island of St. Vincent. These are St. Vincent and the Grenadines down here. This is St. Lucia. This is Martinique up here, and then to the north you've got Dominica. This is Barbados. So again, the center came very near Barbados and is now almost over St. Vincent, which is even further south than we thought. Remember, we were thinking more St. Lucia. But again, with a tropical storm that's not too impressive on satellite or radar, a lot of this heavy weather is going to be over areas there of St. Lucia, and the fact that the airport there recorded a wind gust almost to Category 1 hurricane force means that you're in for some nasty weather as all this rainfall moves through the islands. And Martinique, you guys aren't out of it yet. You're going to get into some of that as time goes on. I don't know how far up that... Here we go. The radar goes... So this is... let me see if my geography is good. This is St. Vincent, very near where the center of Bret is, so that's St. Vincent. And then this is St. Lucia, and then this is Martinique, and then this is Dominica, which was devastated by a Category 5 Hurricane Maria back in 2017. Big difference. And then the one that's like a butterfly up here is Guadeloupe. So again, the further north you are, the less you're going to get, but this area here of St. Lucia, you're really in it, and St. Vincent, you're very near the center. So again, Nasty weather moving through the Windward Islands. Thankfully, after this, we're not going to have to deal with Bret. Look at this wind shear cutting right into it. Look at the wind vectors on here, just ripping it to shreds. Cindy, however, down here has that little safe harbor of an anticyclone, meaning the opposite of our cyclone in our hemisphere. So anticyclone, think of it like it's moving clockwise flow instead of counterclockwise. Clockwise flow over the top of a counterclockwise circulation gives it good ventilation, good environment at the upper levels to strengthen. However, Bret's just getting ripped apart. This is like a knife through the heart of Bret. And so Bret will move into the Caribbean as it is right now and will dissipate. And we won't have to deal with it. I don't think it'll come back in the Gulf of Mexico. It won't even make it up there, I don't think. If it did come back, it would be in the Western Caribbean towards Honduras and Nicaragua, and it's probably not going to happen. Here's a look at the rest of the Eastern Atlantic. More blobs over Africa. A pretty good wave came off. We're going to watch all of these. Another wave down here that has some spin to it. But this one became a tropical depression today, and it is now another tropical storm. This is Tropical Storm Cindy, just upgraded at 11 p.m. Atlantic time Thursday night from the National Hurricane Center. Cindy was at 11.7 north, 45.2 west, winds of 40, a minimal tropical storm, moving west-northwest at 14. So whereas Bret was kind of moving straight west, Cindy has more of a northward component. She is expected to strengthen into a moderate to strong storm, maybe about 60 miles an hour, and then weaken and dissipate by Tuesday. Again, the reasoning, we're going to have that wind shear in the trough going like this, right like a snake, a tropical upper tropospheric trough. The tut is always a problem for systems as they approach the Eastern Caribbean, but in June, the wind shear is just horrible. And so Cindy's going to get decapitated sometime around Monday morning, north of the Virgin Islands. But again, if you are in the northern islands from Guadeloupe through the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, and even the Turks, Caicos, and Bermuda, keep an eye on Cindy just because it's on a different trajectory as Bret. There are the models, the spaghetti model plots. Again, most of them are in good agreement at a west-northwest turn to the northwest and then north, but that would potentially put Bermuda in the crosshairs. And sometimes with these storms, you see them become tropical storms, and then they kind of peter out, and then they kind of blow back up even when they move out to sea, and that's where Bermuda gets smacked by some nasty storms. But I don't think Cindy's going to become a hurricane right now. But just the fact that it's another tropical storm in this area of the Atlantic in late June, forget about it. There's the infrared satellite. Tiny little thing blowing up there, but definitely a minimum tropical storm. It looks like the strongest winds are on the north side, based on some of the data we've seen. We don't have aircraft out there, obviously. It's way too far out. However, through time, they'll be able to fly from the islands out to investigate Cindy. So we're going to watch all of these systems. Again, right now, the main focus is Bret moving through areas there very near St. Vincent and impacting St. Lucia with gusty winds. Most of this convection is getting sheared apart, but it will eventually move into the Caribbean. Look at this map. Look at these winds blowing directly towards Bret. This will kill Bret. Bret will not be able to be a hurricane. It will not be able to strengthen. It will not be able to make it to Central America, let alone the Gulf or Florida. Not this time of year. Cindy, another tropical storm looking better. It should eventually get in a better environment once Bret kind of gets out of her way, and then strengthen to a stronger tropical storm, but then find its way into that shear as well. So we're going to watch both Bret and Cindy as the tropics are active this evening for late June, but thankfully both systems should not become a very intense threat to land. Bret impacting land, Cindy should not. I'm Mike Naso with the latest on the tropics. I will talk to you next time.